Natalie Wood is one of the few names in Hollywood history that maintained superstar leading actress status from childhood right through to middle age. She was nominated for multiple Academy Awards, respected for her craft, not just her looks, and took on roles in some of film history's most iconic movies. But a bizarre and deeply tragic event took her from the world before her time, and sadly, the strange circumstances surrounding her death have largely overshadowed what was a highly successful career and who she was as a person. So join me for today's episode of the Hollywood Icon Suite while I talk about the life, career, and mysterious death of Natalie Wood whilst recreating one of her iconic makeup and hair looks.
What have you got if you haven't got love?
Hello, lovely people of the internet, and welcome to another episode of the Hollywood Icon Suite, where I recreate the hair and makeup looks of old Hollywood stars while talking about their careers and lives. Today I will be recreating one of Natalie Wood's early 1960s look, a bit of an orange lip, a bit of a cat eye, a bit of a bouffant. We love a 60s look. Natalie's story was a fascinating one to research. Her life, her career, her death. Everything was very out of the ordinary. And although her death has pretty much reached the status of the stuff of legend by this point, her life from the day that she entered the film industry at age 5 right through to her death, which they are still investigating today, is filled with so many hardships and hurdles. And amidst all of this, Natalie's personality shone through. Now, the British community probably knows Natalie Wood best for the 1955 film Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean, West Side Story in 1961, and Gypsy about Gypsy Rose Lee in 1962. I will admit I have seen a lot of Natalie Wood films, but I have never seen Rebel Without a Cause, which is something I think probably needs rectifying, even if it is just to check watching James Dean in his most famous role off of my bucket list. Now, Natalie Zakharenko was born in 1938 in San Francisco, California, to Russian immigrant parents who had immigrated to the US after fleeing the Russian Civil War. Her sister, Svetlana, who was also destined to become a famous actress that we now know as Lana Wood of Bond girl fame, is also very important to this story. So how did Natalie Wood become an actress? Some of you may remember her from the timeless Christmas movie, A Miracle on 34th Street.
Here at Macy's, we get 10% off.
Please don't feel that you have to keep pretending for Susan's benefit.
But that was actually her 5th film. At just 5 years of age, Natalie got her first taste of the filmmaking industry when a film came to her hometown to shoot on location. She, along with her mother and sister and many others who called Santa Rosa, California home, lined the street to watch the filmmaking in progress. Natalie's life changed when the director of the film, Irving Pitchell, called out to onlookers for a little girl to eat an ice cream and drop it and start crying. He spotted Natalie in the crowd and asked her mother if she could do it. Now, if anyone knows anything about Natalie's mother, Maria, they will not be surprised that she immediately said yes without hesitation. Now, Irving Pitchell took a keen interest in Natalie, staying in touch with the family over the next 2 years and eventually asking Maria to bring Natalie to Los Angeles to do a screen test. Maria was so excited at the prospect of Natalie becoming a child star that she insisted the entire family move to Los Angeles so that she could dedicate herself to Natalie's career before it had even started. But Natalie did indeed win the role, which was a co-starring one alongside Orson Welles and Claudette Colbert. Like, talk about starting with a bang. Wells described Natalie as being extremely talented and so good it was terrifying. But the real drive and determination actually came from Natalie's mother, Maria, the epitome of the stage mum or momager. She taught Natalie from a very young age that the film and her career came first, even before her health and her safety. And this started from this very first film. Apparently, Natalie was struggling to cry on cue for the movie, and so Maria walked on set holding a butterfly in her hand and literally tore its wings off in front of Natalie to make sure that they would get the shot. Natalie quickly became her family's primary source of income and made over 20 films during her childhood and adolescence. By age 9, she was even named the most exciting juvenile motion picture star of the year by Parents magazine. Throughout her teens, Natalie had a highly successful television career, most notably playing the teenage daughter in The Pride of the Family. Despite having agents at this point, Natalie's mother continued to micromanage every aspect of her career, deciding which films she would and would not appear in. But at the ripe age of 16, Natalie reveled in the opportunity to take her career in her own hands when she accepted a role opposite James Dean in Nicholas Ray's 1955 film Rebel Without a Cause. She described this as being the first time she had ever chosen a role herself and that it actually went against her parents' wishes. Perhaps this rebellion could also have been the basis of her decision to enter into a romantic affair with Nicholas Ray, who was 44 at the time. Rumor has it that she was also romantically involved with her co-star Dennis Hopper at the time. It was a pregnancy scare, apparently, that jolted Natalie to her senses and she ended things with Ray. But despite what was going on behind the scenes, this film launched Natalie from child star to ingenue, and she won her very first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Perhaps the encounter with Nicholas Ray could be boiled down to teenage rebellion, but Natalie's early sexual encounters were fraught with a lot of trauma. Natalie's sister Lana Wood and other close friends of Natalie's have revealed that Maria's obsession with Natalie's career went so far that she even encouraged Natalie to literally do whatever it took to get ahead. Alana recalls one particular incident when Kirk Douglas had taken an interest in Natalie Wood, and Natalie's mother instructed Natalie to have a one-on-one meeting with Kirk Douglas at the Chateau Marmont, keeping in mind that at this point Natalie is 16 years old. Before Natalie went into the date, Maria drilled into her the importance of this meeting and how many doors could be opened for her in the industry if things went well with Douglas. Lana and her mother waited for Natalie in the car, and when Natalie finally returned, Lana recalls that she was really distressed and very disheveled. At the time, Lana was only 8 years old, and so she didn't understand a lot of the conversation that ensued between Natalie and Maria, but she did recall that Maria had basically said to her that she needed to think about the future of her career and to suck it up. It was years later before Natalie would open up to Lana, and Lana found out that Natalie was actually brutally raped and quite badly hurt that evening. Now, Lana has been accused of fabricating things in order to sell the biography that she wrote about Natalie's life, but this story, along with other things that Lana has said, have actually been backed up by other close friends of Natalie who said that she confided similar things to them. So under the controlling guidance of her mother and the studios, Natalie's early dating life was far from filled with exploration and sweet romances, and instead was much more like an extension of her job. Natalie was paired up with various young male colleagues from her studio and sent out on dates to be photographed for the paparazzi to make sure that they were kept in the media. These kinds of stunts have now become very famous and very well known as something that old Hollywood studios used to do to try and keep their stars in the limelight at all times. But once again, Natalie decided to take control of the reins and made a decision that would go on to make its indelible mark on her life. In a strange turn of events, a fellow young actor from 20th Century Fox had shown an interest in Natalie. This was not unusual in itself, except that he had already caught Natalie's eye 8 years earlier. As Natalie has told it in interviews and has been recounted by her sister Lana, Natalie was walking through the corridors of 20th Century Fox with her mum when she was just 10 years old, when a young actor named Robert J. Wagner, who was just 18 at the time, brushed past Natalie, and she was so taken aback by him that she turned to her mother and said, "I'm gonna marry that man." So unsurprisingly, when Wagner called Maria and asked if he could take Natalie out on a date, Natalie was thrilled. The studios were also thrilled, and the two quickly became the hottest young couple in Hollywood. Within a few months, Wagner surprised Natalie with an engagement ring and a glass of champagne, and the two were married in 1957 when Natalie was just 19 years old. Their star power at the time and the media circus that surrounded their dating and married life was akin to like a Brangelina or a Kimye by today's standards. The transition from this time from childhood and adolescent star to adult roles was a tumultuous one. Natalie signed with Warner Brothers in 1956, and the studio made several attempts to pair her with male co-stars in a series of films in an attempt to try and make them like the hottest couple and sell tickets. But despite these opportunities allowing Natalie to demonstrate her acting range, the films flip-flopped between box office failures and big roles with the likes of Frank Sinatra. As a result, Natalie began to turn down roles, and Warner Brothers actually put her on suspension. By 1960, her role in the box office flop All the Fine Young Cannibals had Natalie marked as a washed-up actress, and it seemed that her dazzling career was at a standstill. But this did not deter director Elia Kazan, who asked Natalie to come and have a personal meeting with him rather than a screen test to see if she would be suitable for a role in his upcoming film Splendor in the Grass. Now, this film is actually the film that we're going to be watching tonight, not my night, but the night that this video is coming out, in the Patreon monthly movie club. So I've heard great things about it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if it lives up to its reputation. So it was apparently Natalie's admission that she was undergoing psychotherapy that made Kazan decide to cast her in the role. The role pushed Natalie in a new direction with her acting and showcased her ability to take on more mature and more emotional roles. The film won her another Oscar nomination, and she was also nominated for Best Actress at the Golden Globes and the BAFTA Awards. This gave Natalie a very much needed career boost back up into the ranks of the top actresses of the 1960s. However, this period was marred by serious personal turmoil for Natalie. Behind the scenes, she was really struggling with her mental health and was having as many as 2 to 3 sessions per day with her psychotherapist. Adding to the stress was a serious case of jealousy from her husband, Robert Wagner. He was obsessed with the idea that she was going to cheat on him, constantly accusing her and showing up on set to try and catch her in the act with her co-star Warren Beatty. It got so bad that Wagner himself actually admitted in his own memoir that he got so jealous that he took a gun and followed Warren Beatty back to his home and then sat in a car outside Warren Beatty's house with the intention of killing him. However, it wasn't actually this completely irrational behavior on Wagner's part that brought their marriage to a sudden end in 1961 after just 4 years. It was, in fact, Natalie waking up in the middle of the night and coming downstairs to find Wagner engaged in sexual relations on their couch with their male housekeeper. I don't think anyone saw that coming. All right, it's time for me to move on to my hair and change my battery. For those of you who may be wondering, everything on the top is rolling in the direction that I'm going to be setting it. So these are rolling down, this is rolling down, everything up here is rolling down, and then the 2 rows at the bottom are all rolling upwards as I'm going to be doing a bit of a kick, a bit of a flip out. So despite the difficulties that she was enduring, the years following her divorce from Wagner were actually the most successful in Natalie's career. She went on to star in West Side Story, Gypsy, and Love with the Proper Stranger, for which she won her 3rd Oscar nomination, and ironically won the 1966 Harvard Lampoon for the same film, which is the award for the worst actress of last year, this year, and next. And in a ballsy move, she actually decided to attend the ceremony and accept the award, becoming the first person to ever do so. In the 1960s, she also did such notable films as Sex and the Single Girl. You may be more familiar with the remake starring Renee Zellweger and Ewan McGregor called Down with Love. Fantastic costumes in both, I must say. The Great Race, which is an early childhood favorite of mine, also starring Todie Curtis. Inside Daisy Clover, This Property is Condemned, and the last film that she would appear in before taking an extended hiatus to become a mother and work on her mental health, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice in 1969. On a personal level, the 1960s had been a very difficult decade for Natalie Wood. She had developed an addiction to barbiturates, to sleeping pills, and was obsessively attending psychoanalysis. After dating several high-profile actors, including Warren Beatty, so I guess Robert Wagner's jealousy wasn't completely unwarranted, and a broken engagement to a Venezuelan businessman named Ladislav Blatnik, who incidentally ended up fathering the now princess of Greece and Denmark, Tatiana Blatnik. Natalie's life is kind of like that game 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Is that what it's called? 7 Degrees from Kevin Bacon? Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean. So yes, after dating quite a few celebrities and high-profile people, Natalie very sadly tried to take her own life in 1966. Now, a lot of people say that this was either a response from her divorce 4 years earlier, or perhaps to her breakup with Warren Beatty. But her sister Lana maintains that it was actually a relationship with Sidney Pollack, the director of the film that she was working on, that triggered the suicide attempt. Sidney Pollack was married and had broken things off with Natalie, and apparently she had fallen in love with him and was absolutely devastated by the breakup. But in 1969, things seemed to take a turn for the better for Natalie when she married British producer, screenwriter, and talent agent Richard Gregson, and they had a daughter together. So Natalie was finally married and had a family, something that she had long dreamed of as someone who had grown up with a very difficult family dynamic herself. But sadly, this period of happiness did not last very long. In a cruel twist of fate, history was about to repeat itself. In 1971, Natalie discovered that Gregson was having an affair with her secretary, and less than 3 years after getting married, the two were divorced. Then, rather shockingly, within a few months, Natalie had gotten back together with Robert Wagner, and the two actually got married within less than a year after Natalie was divorced. Lana Wood claims that she was completely baffled by Natalie's decision to get back together with Wagner, and when she asked her why she would do that, apparently Natalie said, "Better the devil you know." I just think that's so sad. I mean, she was doing everything right. She was seeing a psychiatrist and like working on herself. She was putting herself before her work. But despite all of this, she just kept getting rejection after rejection and treated like shit by these guys. And she'd obviously gotten to the point where she just didn't think that she deserved any better than this guy who had already proved himself to be a liar and a cheat and was pretty obviously in the closet. But they did have a daughter together in 1974 and remained married until Natalie's death in 1981. But there were rumors that all throughout this time, both Wood and Wagner had multiple affairs. In the 1970s, Natalie returned to the screen, largely doing television work and some direct-to-TV movies and some film roles as well. And it seemed by the end of the decade that Natalie was not only regaining her reputation as a talented actress, but was also pushing her limits and taking her acting to new levels. She won a Golden Globe for her role in the miniseries From Here to Eternity in 1980, and in 1981 she started filming a blockbuster sci-fi film opposite Christopher Walken called Brainstorm. Apparently she became very close with Christopher Walken, who believed her to be a very talented actress and was encouraging her to pursue her acting full-time. There are rumors that the two of them were romantically involved. We don't know for sure whether this is true, but it is certainly something that Robert Wagner believed. Once again, he was extremely jealous, and basically everybody on the film set knew about his jealousy and his fits of rage. Now, this is the part of the story I find so weird. So bizarrely, even though Wagner was really jealous of Walken and I would assume did not like Walken as a result, he decided to host a party on his boat for Thanksgiving 1981 out at Santa Catalina Island, and he invited several people, but really weirdly, the only person that accepted the invitation was Christopher Walken. Like, why did he invite him? And why when Walken was the only one that responded, did they go ahead with this? Like, I just don't understand, but you know, whatever. So the only people that ended up going away on this Thanksgiving trip was Wagner and Natalie, Christopher Walken, and the longtime captain of the boat and friend of the couple, Dennis DeVerne. It was on this surprising and mystery-shrouded trip that Natalie's life would come to a very tragic end on November 29th, 1981. Now, I won't dedicate a huge section of this video to Natalie's mysterious death because this video is already very, very long. But if you're interested, I will link the best and most informative podcast that I found on the topic down below. It is a 12-part series and it is about 20 minutes per episode. Really fantastic, highly recommend. What I will do is leave you with a synopsis of the original story and the new information that has come out since the case has been opened in 2011, because this shit is seriously sus. Now, I'm going to start with the thing that I find the most uncanny in all of this, and that is that Natalie's death was predicted before she was even born. Now, instinctually, I want to call bullshit on this, but Natalie actually talked about this herself throughout her life, and her sister Lana confirms it and other friends, so I guess, you know, weirdly, this is the truth. So Natalie's mother told Lana and Natalie from a very young age that she had been to see a fortune teller before Natalie was born who had told her that she was going to have a daughter who would be known the world over but would tragically die in dark waters. It literally gives me goosebumps to think about this because Natalie's disappearance off their boat was in the middle of the night. She was found floating face down in the water in the morning. So she quite literally died in dark water. So, you know, whether this was true or not, or whether it was just something that Maria told Natalie to, I don't know, bizarrely try and keep her under control or keep her scared, doesn't really matter because either way, it came true, which is just bonkers. And sadly, you know, I think in some ways it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy when you think about it, because the result of Maria telling Natalie this story all her life was that Natalie became petrified of water and never learned to swim, which is kind of the opposite of what you really should be doing. Like, wouldn't you think that would be your cue to become like an Olympic level swimmer? You know what I mean? Natalie also had a close call in her childhood acting years. She was actually in a role where she was suspended on a bridge over water and the bridge broke. The set broke and plunged her into the water down below. She actually broke her wrist to the point that a bone was protruding out of the skin. And then, of course, her mother told her to shut up and keep acting in the movie, and they did nothing about it. So she had a scar for the rest of her life. Understandably, that also contributed to her fear of the water. However, apparently Natalie did seem quite at ease on her and Wagner's boat and was also seen regularly out on her own in the boat's dinghy. So, you know, I think by the time we get round to Natalie's death, she'd pretty much overcome the kind of crippling aspect of that fear. But from what we're told, she wasn't about to like go swimming in the ocean or anything like that. I'll leave the details of the original case and the new details and witnesses that have come to light to the numerous documentaries on the topic. But I do want to highlight why I personally think that Robert Wagner absolutely 100% has something to hide. I mean, I'm not alone. Okay, this guy is sus enough that the police still have him as a person of interest in a case that they say will remain open. Okay, first of all, the only people on the boat, of course, were Natalie, Wagner, Walken, and Dennis Deverne, the captain. Now, Deverne has come out and said that Wagner did it. Okay, he says originally Wagner tried to bribe him into keeping his mouth shut, that he and his lawyers intimidated him, and that he and Walken kept to the story that Natalie just disappeared out of her cabin. They have no idea what happened, and she was found hours later in the water. Now, the story that they put out there with their lawyers was that they figured Natalie must have gone out to the dinghy and was trying to tie it up because she used to find the fact that it banged on the boat annoying, and she obviously had been drinking, she was on sleeping pills, and she fell in and drowned. But in 2011, Deverne came out and changed his story. He wrote a book about the incident and even spoke to police, And he claims that what really happened is that he actually saw Wagner and Natalie fighting on the back of the boat before her disappearance. Now, this has also been confirmed by new witnesses, the identities of whom the police will not reveal, but they confirm Dennis's story about the couple fighting on the back of the boat. So DeVerne claims that he heard them fighting, he saw the two of them out there, he continued to hear them fighting, and then suddenly it all went quiet and he came back to discover Wagner standing alone, saying that Natalie wasn't in her cabin and had just disappeared. So DeVerne is obviously concerned about this, so he suggests as a captain, it's nighttime, she's a female out there alone, and he knows her, he knows that she's scared of the water and can't swim. So he suggests that they turn on the searchlight and they look for Natalie and try and get her back onto the boat. But bizarrely, Robert Wagner says no. Instead, he suggests that they go and have a drink together inside the boat and wait and see if she just turns up. What the actual fuck? So either way, it was hours before they notified anyone of Natalie's disappearance, and when they did, it was not the Coast Guard that Wagner called. It was the manager of the restaurant they had been to earlier that evening. Now, Walken, Wagner, and DeVerne all claim that at this point, they all firmly believed that Natalie would be found alive in the dinghy. But either way, it seems to me that it was more important for them to avoid alerting the media than it was to make sure that she was safe. You know? I also don't understand why DeVerne and Walken didn't do anything. I mean, Robert Wagner was clearly being totally irrational, and him not wanting to notify anyone or go and look for Natalie was just completely insane. So why didn't either of them pick up the telephone and call for a search party? Like, they are not blameless here. And once Natalie was found, it was discovered that she had only died shortly before they found her. So if they had actually gone out and searched for her earlier, she may have been found alive. Walken has apparently cooperated with the police since the case was reopened in 2011, but he has always publicly claimed that he was asleep when Natalie disappeared and he has no idea what happened. What we do know now is that they did not tell the detectives at the time that the group of them had been fighting throughout the evening. So they had had a big argument in the restaurant earlier that night and had continued to fight on the boat. And the fight was about the fact that Christopher Walken had said to Natalie that he felt that she should shift her focus away from family and focus on her career instead. Unsurprisingly, Robert Wagner did not appreciate this, especially given he was already suspicious of Natalie and Christopher Walken having an affair. Other things that I find strange are that Dennis DeVerne says when he saw Natalie and Wagner fighting on the back of the boat, Natalie was wearing a nightgown, but when Natalie was found floating in the water, she was wearing a coat. Robert Wagner's added to his story over the years, and one of the things that he has claimed is that Natalie used to love boat hopping and going to different parties on other boats, and that she probably went out on the dinghy that night to boat hop and go to parties, wearing nothing but a nightgown and a coat. A broken bottle was also found on the boat, but it wasn't until many years later that Wagner confirmed he was the one who actually broke the bottle, but it was in an earlier fight that evening. Wagner was also never a person of interest, which is so weird to me because I feel like we are always hearing that the number one suspect in any woman's death is always her husband, right? They eliminate them as the first suspect because statistically, it's usually the husband. Also, Natalie's fingernails were not inspected during the autopsy, which apparently is standard practice, number one. But number two, the report from the scene on the night of her death actually said that there were scratches on the dinghy that could prove that she was trying to climb back into the dinghy from the water. So why would they not confirm that by checking under her fingernails and then potentially also find if she had fought back against someone, like if there was an argument, or if this wasn't just an accident? But here is the absolute kicker for me. So Wagner officially started dating his now wife of 33 years, Jill St. John, on Valentine's Day of 1982. That is already a mere 10 weeks after Natalie's death. But apparently the two of them actually started dating within a couple of weeks, and Jill St. John was actually at the couple's home the day that Natalie died. She went to meet Wagner, who did not confirm Natalie's body. So when she was found in the water, he sent the captain to go and confirm that it was Natalie. He never ever saw Natalie's body. He just went home to Jill St. John. There is so much more to this story. I could honestly go on for hours, but that's not the focus of this video. And personally, I do think that way too much emphasis is put on Natalie's death and not enough on the legacy that she has left for us. I've personally seen Gypsy, West Side Story, The Great Race, and Splendor in the Grass, and I would highly recommend all of them. And they aren't even the films that she's apparently her best in. So let's remember to celebrate Natalie as much as we may be morbidly fascinated with what happened that night. So here is the final look based on her beauty makeup. Again, these are not transformation videos. I'm just recreating the way that their makeup was done. I will always look like me. I don't have a skill for transforming into other people, and I'm fine with that. I do like the hairstyle. I think I might actually style my hair like this more often. It's cute. If you like the video, guys, do let me know down below. You can always suggest who you would like to see in future series. Coming up next is none other than Hedy Lamarr, who had both the brains and the beauty. As always, thank you to my lovely patrons for their contribution. They pay for the tools and supplies needed for this video. If you're interested in becoming a patron, check out the link down below. You can of course come and follow me on my Instagram and my TikToks if you're looking for more vintage tips and tricks. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye.